Hello, everybody, and I want to welcome everybody to the Jazz Confusion Power Hour on the Source Radio Network. For those of you that tune in every week, and for those of you that have not seen the Power Hour yet, each week we try to bring on a very special guest from the music industry. And over the past year or so, we've had just a phenomenal array of guest artists. We've had Annie Lennox, Billy Ocean. We just had recently Brian Culbertson. We've had Mickey Howard. We've had Raheem Devon. We really try to find an interesting mix. And the purpose of the show is so that all of the fans of these artists and all the people that listen to the show that want to become fans get to know the artist in a more intimate way. A lot of times we just think that the artist just shows up on stage and starts singing, and it doesn't work that way. Whether you're a multi instrumentalist or you're a songwriter or a vocalist, it takes years of training, and it takes today an incredible sense of business acumen in order to survive and to make money and to prosper and stay in the industry. It's not simple anymore. It's become difficult. So the artists that you're going to see, put in lots of time. They're dedicated to their careers, and they really have something special to offer. So tonight I'm really blessed. We have a wonderful, wonderful songwriter, vocalist, multi instrumentalist. She's referred to as the queen of indie soul, the very wonderful, and I'm so blessed to have her, Conya Das. So I'm going to bring Conya on in 1 second. I want to just clear up a little few things here. There we go. Okay, and now I'm ready. So, okay, I'm going to bring Conya on. Conya, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
It's my pleasure. I've been a fan of yours for many years. I've followed you, quite extensively. And what I really love about what you bring as a vocalist, I know you're a multi-instrumentalist and you're a songwriter, but what you bring is this eclectic sense of funk and jazz fusion and R&B and soul and neo soul. And what's really nice, and I've been having several artists like you on recently, your fans never know what's going to be coming next, and that makes it interesting and makes them appreciative. It's not redundant, and it's always something fresh and new. So, I want to talk about that aspect of your music career, how you came to define the kind of music you do. So we'll talk about a whole bunch of things. Yeah, right off the bat, the first thing I like to talk about with any artist is what's top of mind. What would you like to tell all the people listening in tonight? What projects you're working on? What's going on with you, Conya?
Wow. Well, besides the fact that I teach as well, I'm back in the studio working on new music. I have about maybe 6 songs down, but I'm never satisfied. So I'm always going back and rerouting things. So I probably could have a ton of remixes. And just, I have a show coming up. So I'm excited about that.
Where's the show? Sorry to
it's gonna
interrupt.
be I'm supporting Life Jennings, and it's February 26th in Detroit, Michigan, at the Grand
Great.
Casino. Yeah,
Wonderful. Okay, good. Well, we'll make
yeah,
note of that again later on the show. Good.
yeah.
Okay. So
So,
tell me a little bit about the new LP you're putting together.
well,
What's it?
I
Go
haven't
ahead.
thought of the title yet, but it's some funky stuff actually. I have some nice grooves that actually sets me outside of what people would perceive me. Like you said, you never know what angle I'm going to be coming from. So I'm really excited about the music that I'm working on. It's coming pretty nice and smooth. I'm working with Myron Davis again and
Okay.
Rodney Artez, Art of Artez. So the team again and Mr. B Golden. So I'm just really excited.
Yeah,
It's just
you and I just
yeah,
talked briefly before the show. I'm having B. Golden on as my special guest next week.
yeah.
It's perfect timing. It's really great
It
timing.
is. It is. So
So
I'm pretty excited. I'm really excited.
good. Now, on the new music you're working on, um, basically, how do you approach it? Do you have songs already on the shelf that you bring together, or do you do some writing and composing during the process of creating the new LP? How do you go about just assembling the songs?
It's a combination. Like this is one song with Myron Davis. I've been trying to beg him to let me redo this song. He had actually wrote it for himself, but it's such a beautiful song. I'm like, I have to have that song. So he finally like, okay, you can use it. I'm like, good. It's called No Regret. So I can't wait for the world to hear that song. It's just a gorgeous song. And then sometimes I'll have a melody or I'll start writing some lyrics and I'll say, hey, what can you write around that? And that's what, when I was working with Art of Artez, it's a couple songs that I'm expecting to be on the new project. That's what I had, a melody in my mind and then a concept. So that's how that came to be. And then with B Golden, he's always, I got this track for you, and it just resonates. So I think we all have a wonderful chemistry. So it's just kind of like a natural progression.
Terrific. Yeah, I want to come back and revisit this part of the conversation too. How does somebody like yourself, being a vocalist and a songwriter and a multi-instrumentalist, how do you start writing a song? Well, I want to spend a little time on that in a little while because every song may be different, but every artist does it differently too. So,
Right. And
um,
let me correct the whole multi-instrumentalist. Look, I don't know which publicist I want. I can play a little enough to get my idea across. So, and I have an acoustic. I play the same chord. So look, I used to play the viola since third grade. But I noticed when you're writing to guitar, it's a different vibe. So it's funny, that we were talking about B Golden because he's gonna come. I'm hoping this weekend, so he can bring the guitar. We can just vibe and come from a different angle. So to me, the whole state of mind is different when you're writing with acoustic versus keys, or someone sends you a track, it's another thing. So it's just so many different variations.
do you chart and score? Or do you have an MD that does that?
My MD does that. Look,
Okay,
to be honest, because I went to a performance school of arts and I was pretty good with
right.
theory, but yeah, I don't do that.
Okay, all right. Okay,
It's
let's
important
start.
though.
Yeah, let's start at the beginning. By the way, the multi-instrumentalist thing, I had read somewhere that you play strings and keys. So
I
that's,
Yeah, and it wasn't off, but
yeah.
I played the viola. I didn't think I was that good at it, but yeah.
But at least you know the basic chords and you know something about strings. So
Yes,
yeah, that
yeah,
helps when you're doing the writing too. But I
yeah,
want to
and
go
I can
back.
hear it.
Yeah, what I want to go back and ask you about is when did you get the bug, the music bug? I know that it says I read in your bio somewhere that at the age of 5 you started playing music. What magically happened at age 5? Did you say, "Hey, I want to be a vocalist," or what
Wow.
happened?
Well, I was the only child for a long time, so I'm like, and I do have a brother and I have a sister, but I was my mom's only child for a long time. So, you know, since I can remember, I've always had organs and things like that. So, when you're the only child, you have an imagination and you think you can do all these things. So I would start playing chords and kind of singing with the melody. And, I come from a very musical family. So we would have family gatherings and they would play the records and all that. So it was just mimicking. Like I remember knowing how to run or do riffs by listening to Michael Jackson. So it's just things that it's a feeling that you got too. It's hard to describe, but it's something emotionally that I felt attached to when it came to music. I could go in my own little cocoon, my own little world, and just get lost in music with melodies and humming. And I didn't know I had anything until my family members, they would say, Conya, we're gonna put on Natalie Cole's "I Got Love on My Mind," and that was my staple song. So
So you listen to Natalie Cole, you listen to Michael Jackson.
oh yeah, Stevie Wonder. My mom was like, "You don't know how to sing unless you listen to Sarah Vaughan and Dinah Washington." I'm like, "What?"
Yes.
And I didn't appreciate that until I got older. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So your early musical influences. You mentioned Michael Jackson. I had Larry Dodson from the Bar-Kays on a few
Oh
weeks
wow.
ago, and
Mhm.
he told me something fascinating. They had 20 #2 Billboard hits, but never a #1. And I asked him why, and he said Michael Jackson. That's
What?
why he
Yeah, I
never
remember
had.
that.
Yeah, that's why he never had a #1 because of Michael Jackson. 20 #2s. So
Sheesh.
Michael Jackson's influence is so pervasive, so much more than anybody even realizes. What he's,
Yeah.
how, he just dominated music during, when he was here with us. So
And still, yeah, because my son, he Michael had passed, but my son was always, I want to hear Beat It, and Michael is, I want to hear, the Thriller song. It's just, it's still timeless. I think it'll just constantly have that influence on people, you know.
yeah, and you talk about being multi-talented. I mean, he created more dance steps than anybody I've ever seen in music. So I mean, he was a songwriter and a vocalist and a choreographer. I mean, there wasn't
Amazing.
anything, between Michael Jackson and Prince. There wasn't much room around for
Abs-
everybody.
Why did I knew you were gonna say that. Prince for sure. Woo. Yes. Oh my gosh.
Yeah, yeah. Well, look, tell me, okay, from age 5, when did you start playing music more formally? Did you play in public school, or what
I've
happened?
gone to public schools all my life, and for high school, I actually went to a performing arts school, even though it was a public school. So it just started like I can say since like third grade when I was playing the viola. I ended up having like a little quartet. One young lady played the what did Kathy play? I think she played the keys, and another Kiva Behringer. I never forgot. We were all like in third, fourth grade. She played the bass guitar, and we were just so fascinated. And I even wrote a score of the music Fame, and we all played it, and the teacher really motivated us, and she's like, I want you guys to perform it. So that just made me think, oh, I really have something. Because you really, sometimes you just do things and you don't really know you have it until other people recognize it. So that's where it started. And then I started getting more comfortable with singing because I was always so nervous. And so I'll never forget my middle school teacher, besides my family, they knew I could sing, but my middle school teacher and then my classmates were like, oh, could you sing for us? And, they would hear me humming. So I'm like, oh, maybe I do have something. So it took a minute for me to get comfortable in my skin.
Yeah. Again, maybe I missed it. How did you choose the viola?
We ended up, I just wanted to do something. So when I think yeah, the music teacher, we had to do this thing right here, the little where you can do multi things with your hand. And I did it, and she was like, okay, I'm gonna put you on the viola. And that's how it started.
Ah, that's
It was just
funny.
like I was just like, okay, whatever. And then I really enjoyed it. Now my mother said it used to bug her, it used to get on her nerves. I'm like, well, I thought I was pretty good. So then they had a summer program, where well, since you've been in Ohio, Case Western Reserve students came and gave us additional training during the summer.
Oh,
And
okay.
then when I went to audition for Cleveland School of the Arts, I initially wanted to play. I never played the flute, but I said I wanted to play the flute, and I went for instrumental. But then I decided I wanted to audition for vocal, and that's what I got accepted as for vocal music.
Wow. Okay.
A whole roller coaster.
No, no. What's interesting, Kanye, is you'd be amazed how many artists I've had on, who play either like the trombone. If you're a kid, that's not the first instrument that comes to mind.
Right.
And so many artists have become just so well known for certain instruments,
Mhm.
chose that instrument vicariously. It was accidental. Like I mentioned the trombone, an artist I had on, he said he wanted to first he asked if he can play the drums. They said we already have a drummer, and he said, well, can I play the sax? We already have a saxophone player. They said, well, what's left? The trombone. So
It's something.
yeah, and that was his career, and it was by default. So
You
we,
just
we
never
tend
know. You
no,
never
you
know.
don't. A lot of times I think fans think that you had a certain proficiency, or you just knew what you wanted to play, but it doesn't work that way.
Hmm.
It's and and a person when I mentioned Brian Culbertson, he plays 12 different instruments, and
Ooh, wow.
Prince on his first, Prince's first album, he played every instrument on that album. He had nobody in the studio but him. So
Amazing.
it is amazing. It's just amazing how people choose an instrument. I find it fascinating. And there's always a story behind it. like you in your case, to buy
it is.
the
It is.
viola. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
I even
So
went and
you,
bought it. I bought a viola, but I'm like, it's been sitting there collecting dust.
well, you went to the Cleveland School of Art. I lived in Cleveland for a number of years, so I'm very familiar with all of this.
um,
Every place you've been. Um, but you went to the Cleveland School of the Arts, and what made you want to go there? Why did you choose that
um,
route?
well, I would say the '80s was a tough time, and that's when the whole, at least for Cleveland, the whole drug scene. A lot of students that we had went to school with were either doing things they had no business doing. We had some that were killed, so I was just like, think, oh my God, what am I going to do? I have to stay focused. So what I did, sometimes, no matter what you go through, still kids have resilience. So I was like, I know I can't go to this school because I don't think I would do well. I think it'll be a lot of negative influences for me. So I applied to Cleveland School of the Arts, and I don't know if you remember aviation.
Hmm.
And I was like, I got to go somewhere.
Sure.
So, aviation, I don't even think I got a call back for them. But then I ended up getting a letter, to go audition for the School of Arts. And I went and auditioned, and I was just so excited, that I had got accepted. And
That's
that was my
that,
song.
that's great. And while you were there, did you meet any other artists that now are still performing?
Absolutely. Avant was there, but he was actually an underclass student. Frank McComb and I was in we were in a band together. So actually the first real song that I wrote, I think we were like 13, 14. We still remember the song. So Frank McComb, I don't know if Lafayette Carthon, he was more so behind the scenes with
Yeah.
MDM for the Winans, and like I think he
Oh,
played on Michael Jackson's "You're Not Alone."
oh,
Um,
okay.
yeah, just a lot of people that are still doing their thing. So even though we did a lot of choral songs, I learned how to sharpen my craft in the world of quote unquote soul music or R&B with shedding with with the upperclassmen. We would just sing in the modules and harmonize, and I just learned how to color my tone doing a lot of things. So I learned some technical things from Performance School of Arts, but also I learned a lot from the peers.
Well, one of the things that fascinated me when I started looking into your bio, you were a
Mhm.
songwriter before you really embarked on a solo career, correct?
Yes. Yep.
Who are you writing for?
I don't know, the late Latin vocalist Soraya. I don't know if you remember her.
No, I don't.
Um, it was a young man. It was overseas, but 3LW. I had did vocal arrangements for it, and then we wrote a song. And then I had wrote like a bridge on the song. I was just like, I just want to write. So I was able to do a lot of vocal mocks for Gerald Levert because initially, how I got even started on my first solo project, a friend was like, "Hey, Gerald's looking for background singer, so you need to go audition." So I called the music director. He had me come in. I'm like, I'm in grad school, and he's like, "I love your voice, but by you being in school, I don't think it's going to be a good fit for doing background, but I would love to work with you." And that's how that kind of spearheaded.
Oh, okay. So I was
Yeah.
going to ask you about how you got to meet Gerald Levert when you were so young,
Yeah, I
and
met
that
him even before that though. It was like we were just the Levert, the group, they were just so cool, and it was just like, wow, they're from from our town. So every
yeah.
time we would run into them, they were just so down to earth. So it was just amazing that as I grew older, he knew who I was, and we would kind of run in the same circles at times.
That's great. Again, a lot of these career making collaborations, people
Mhm.
who are instrumental in giving you the confidence you need to go out there. A lot of times, the meetings are just,
Mhm.
coincidental. Hey, he needed a background singer. You were told about it. You called, you know,
Right.
it, and of course, you have to have the goods, or they're not going to be interested in even, moving ahead with you. But so many of these connections, and this is what younger artists need to
Mhm.
know. You have to network. It's just not enough to try to go do it
Right.
on your own.
Yeah.
And social media now makes that much easier to do than ever before. You
Hmm.
know, um, but there are also websites you can pay a fee, and they will let you have access to any manager of any artist. So you don't have to even try to track it down yourself. At like $29 a month, you can get to all the promoters and managers for all the artists you may want to work with if you're a
Right.
young rising musician, you know. And I guess you and I are gonna talk about this. It's the business side of music also. And you know, you early on, you know, you chose to be an indie artist. You didn't choose to work with a label.
Mhm.
And you know, I want to I want to get come back to that a little bit later. Also, these are all parts of your music career that I just find fascinating,
Thank
you know,
you.
to take a look at. Now, one of the things I find the most fascinating is you got a degree in chemistry.
Yes. Yeah.
Why, why don't you tell us about that? You know,
Wow.
how
You know,
that.
well, going to School of Arts, the irony of that, I had an amazing music teacher, Dr. Woods, but I also had an amazing chemistry and physics teacher, Dr. Sanjeeva Murthy, and she inspired me. I was like, you know, I know I could do music, but I have to have something solid to fall back on. So I was like, I want to go to dental school. So I ended up going to the College of Worcester for undergrad once I graduated, and you know, I was going to stick it through, and I majored in chemistry. At the time, I think they were number 3 in the country. So once I did that, I got accepted to Case Western Reserve Dental School. But then I actually did um, a, a study on my thesis for undergrad, which was separation of triglycerides using thin layer chromatography. We're talking about something like 30 years ago. But so
Right.
the school, the head of the dental school was like, "Oh, I really loved your thesis. You know, it was an independent study project, and I would love for you to work during the summer." You know, so that was my end to even get into Case, and I didn't realize they had to do gross anatomy the first year, and that was a wrap. I was like, "Nope, I'm not doing it." So, yeah, so I ended up getting into teaching. My best friend was like, well, one of my best friends was like, you need to just start subbing. And I'm like, okay. But then the principal was like, you're really good at this. You need, you know, they kept calling me back. So then she's like, I'm going to sign you up for this program at Cleveland State. And I want you to, you know, go to that. And it was just so many curves. And that's how I ended up, you know, in the teaching field.
And what did you end up teaching chemistry or did you teach other
I
things? Or?
didn't. I didn't, but the beauty of it is I have special ed, but I have algebra 2 and transition to advanced math, which is like incorporating financial algebra. So all those skills, the solid math and solid science skills are coming full, you know, they're in the forefront because I need to know those skills in order to teach the math to the students. But chemistry, no, because I'm like, I was looking at my labs. I'm like, now how did I get this right? All these unknowns is like, it'll come back to me, but no, I kind of left it where it was.
Yeah, yeah. One of the things I read about your bio, and the fact that you decided to bring music into the classroom as a neat way to connect with your students.
Hmm.
And your debut album was called "A Poem About Miss Doss." So why don't you tell
Yeah.
everybody about tell them about the integration of music with education? You know, why did that work for you, and why do you think that was a good approach?
I think music is universal. So that if you don't know any other way to connect to people around the world, I think music is like a major component. And it's the same thing with students. So that was my hook because a lot of the schools when I especially when I started subbing were pretty tough schools. So I would just go in there and sing a song or ask about music, and that was that hook. After that, it was like I was their best friends. But as far as the song, and just like academically, I would have the students use their art, whatever the art form was, you know, show me what you know and try to incorporate music or art or dance just to, you know, showing like if we were doing angles, you know, they would do symbols or parent functions, they would do little
Wow.
dances or whatever. So it just kind of spinning my wheels and making sure they were interested. But the funny thing about a poem about Miss Doss, which is that was the name of my first solo album, a
Right.
young lady, something I told her she couldn't do, and she wrote this horrible poem about me, and it was titled Doss. So my principal was like, Miss Doss, you know, I think you would like to see this poem that her name was Megan. I won't say her last name, but she's very grown, and I don't think she cared. And it was like so many unflattering comments, and at the end, it was like a poem about Miss Doss. So when I went to the studio, I was like, I can't believe this student wrote this about me, and they thought it was so like you should name that the title of your album, and that's what I did. However, it took a life of its own because all the songs I was writing, and even the songs that I hadn't written yet, I was like, how could I connect this? And that's how I came out with Zoning in My Dome. Anything that people wanted to know about me was encompassed in that album. So that's like my first baby.
When did you write that first album? When did it come out?
Oh my gosh, it's almost 21 years ago. That was in 2002. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was around then too. Yeah,
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So, how did the student ever catch on?
Oh yeah, and then the funny thing, she's got to be in her late 20s or early 30s now, and I ran into her, and she was just so happy to see me because this was after she graduated, so we laughed,
That's great. That's a great story. That's wonderful.
Yes, she was one of the toughest ones. That was one of my tasks.
Well, what I want to do, Conya, if it's okay with you, I want to play some of your music for everybody. For your fans, they'll recognize some of these, and for those people that have been under a rock and aren't a fan, I think once they hear the music, they'll know why they should be buying your music.
Thank you.
So I want to start off with a duet, actually, that you did with Eric Roberson. So I'll play the music, and then maybe you can just tell us about how that song came about. And I assume that you wrote the music for that song. So let me just play some of it for everybody.
Words are not strong enough to convey what I found is everlasting. We have seen joy and pain, yet so much that we have gained. And all of the challenges, see, we promised us forever. And no matter what, however, we gon' try, even when we have occasional disagreements. See, we find ourselves as one. Every now and again, we are reminded that everything's a new day. Everything's a new day, chance to make it better. Oh, it ain't easy, and I'll tell no lies, but it's worth the fight. Oh, but it ain't easy. Ask me, and I'll tell no lies, but it's worth the fight.
Seems like we always off and on. It ain't always wrong, but ain't always good. I just feel so misunderstood, yeah. Wish we could just get along consistently. What does it have to be? Oh, so damn heavy all the time. Just trying to ease my mind, but can I let it go? I'm half here and half gone for so long. Can't be formed by the lips that kiss yours for so long. It be so wrong, but it ain't easy. Ask me and I'll tell no lie, but it's worth the fight. Yeah, yeah. But it ain't easy. Ask me and I'll tell no lie, but it's worth the fight. Yeah.
Through it all, ups and downs, we both know it's alright.
But it ain't easy. Ask me and I'll tell no lie,
But it's worth the fight.
tell no lie, worth the fight.
It's worth the fight.
Yeah.
Oh,
It ain't easy.
yeah. I
Tell no lie,
tell no lie.
worth the fight. Yeah.
It ain't
Okay. Wow, that's great. That's a great track. I really love that. So, okay, duets. Who was your first duet?
Oh, my first duet. as far as like, let me see, the young man on a poem about Miss Doss. The song is called Heaven, and his name is Zero. His real name is Tommy Johnson. I think he might have went back to that, but amazing. And the thing is, we lived in the same city and never knew about each other until it was, I had wrote the song Heaven, and I had wrote the male version. I'm like, I could hear that. And the producer, Edwin Nicholas at the time was like, I have the perfect person. And that was my first duet.
How do you choose to collaborate? Like with Derek Roberson, how did this come about on this song?
I had been wanting to collab with Eric for a long time, but it was interesting because right before COVID, it was like right before everything was shut down, we had did the Capitol Jazz Festival and the cruise, and he interviewed me, and he was like, you know what, we've been knowing each other for a long time, and I don't understand why we, for over the last 19 or 20 years, we've been doing shows together since day one. And we've never done a duet together. I'm like, you know what? You're right. We need to make that happen. And he was like, we have it on camera, so we got to make it happen. So after that, COVID happened, and I was just so humbled and so happy that he had the time because I was like, I hear this track, Art of Artes with Rodney Jones, aka Rodney Jones, sent me the shell of the track, and I'm like, oh, I love this groove. So I wrote to him, and I'm like, this will be a perfect duet. So I sent Eric what I had, and I said, let me know what you think about it. And he's like, I'm feeling it. I love it. So it was kind of interesting how we had to do it because it would have been perfect to be able to be in the studio, but because of the whole pandemic, it wasn't. So we had to get creative, so that's how that happened. But it's such an honor because he's so awesome.
Yeah. The duet came off so well. I mean, you could tell there's a good synergy between both of you when you were doing
Thank
it.
you.
So you wrote the song?
Yes, I did.
You wrote the music and the lyrics?
The music is the lyrics is me, but then
Right.
like any additional thing, Rodney Jones wrote the music, the track.
Okay.
And then sometimes I'm like, I hear this, add this, add some bass, but Rodney he's the go-to. He's so amazing.
That's great. How do you typically, Conya, when you sit down to write a song, do you have a tune in your mind? Do you have lyrics that come to mind that you kind of write down and come back to later on? I mean, do you keep a book, of
you don't even want to see. I'm trying to look in the studio and see. You don't even want to see what I have. It's like I go back and like, what the heck did I write? So it's just, and then sometimes songs will come, just like that. And some I might have an idea after having a conversation or my own experiences, and then I might scrap it, and so it has so many different, it's a variety of ways that I write, but that particular song, it was just, the melody was already there, and I just started saying, it ain't easy, and then I was like, what am I talking about? And then I just wrote it. It's like an outer body experience,
You see, what you just did was, it ain't easy. Do you put the lyrics in your head to a melody, or do you just have the melody and then you think of the lyric? It seems like in this case,
sometimes it's both. It's like sometimes I'll just be like, I don't even know what I'll be saying if the music is going on, and I'll like, and then I'm like, that sound. It's just like it's in my mind. It's the lyrics. It's like that's saying it ain't easy, and then after that, what is not easy, and then you just have this concept. It's the process is really interesting. It depends.
Yeah. This is another thing I have found too, and you can correct me if I'm wrong. For most songwriters, the process is mysterious. You don't know what's going to come out the back end. It's not like you say, "Oh, I have this song in my head." It just proceeds, willy-nilly. There's no particular way to explain it, and it's never over till it's over.
It isn't. Yeah, it's weird. It's like then sometimes I'll go back and I'm like, what was I thinking? Or wow, why did I say that lyric? I feel like it's an outer body, like somebody else is taking over, and you're just like a vessel.
Yeah. How do you know when the song is finished?
For me, songs are never finished, but I've learned over the years to say, okay, you don't want the song to lose its natural essence, so embrace it, and because sometimes I've noticed every time I try to go back and do something, if I let somebody listen to it, it's like, I like the original better. Something's missing. So that's when okay, just leave well enough alone, because some projects would never be finished if you try to get everything perfect. And sometimes it just needs that rawness, you know.
Yeah. You hit it right on the head.
Mhm.
Again, I've heard this from other songwriters too, and other musicians, that sometimes the song just arrives at the end full blown. You know that
Mhm.
there's no point in trying to smooth it out, because you don't want to lose that natural feeling. And then other times you just know something's missing. You may not know what it is, but you just
Yes.
know something's missing. And
That's when you have to go, yeah, and take a break and then go back to it and be like, okay, what is it missing? Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes sometimes it might be a string, it might be a horn, it might be,
Yes.
another, maybe you need another verse. Maybe there's a verse or two missing that you need to add on. I remember talking a while ago with Paul Simon about Bridge Over Troubled Waters. And,
Whoa.
and yeah, one of the things he said was that when they were in the studio, our uncle said to him, "This song isn't finished. You need to write two more verses." And Paul said, "No, this is going to be a short song. I like it just the way it is." And they spent the day on it. And again, Art said, "You need to have two more verses. It's something else." And he added two more verses, the last two verses of the song. And
Wow, powerful.
yeah, and so this, it's a mysterious process. And that's what makes, I think, when you're a performer and you're going to perform something you wrote, it is different than performing a cover. Not that there's anything wrong with performing covers, but you have a feeling, an affinity for the song that you wrote, because it comes from your heart. It's now, of course, there are great artists that do great covers. I'm not in any way putting that down, but when you're a performer and you're doing your own music on stage, it has to have a different sense of what you're giving
Yeah,
to your. Yeah.
it does.
Yeah.
You hit it right on. And then some songs you just don't bother. Like some things you just don't try to remake.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Okay, let's talk about another song that I want to play for everybody. It's called Wishful Thinking. It's with B. Golden. I mentioned I'm going to have on as my next guest. So let me play some of that and for everybody, and then maybe you can tell us a little bit about that song, okay, and how you created it. I love the variety of music that you have.
Thank you. Thank you.
What are we doing here? Can't read the title clear. Can we talk right now? In order to grow and to be all we can be, we need to take this serious. My heart didn't travel this far, only just to come this far. You wanna know, just wanna let go. It's not that simple, not that simple. 'Cause of what we're building on. No. In the name of the steps we make, this last forever. Bring this vision to fruition. I'm just wishful thinking. Maybe promise that we make this last forever. Bring this vision to fruition. I'm just wishful thinking. Is it something you're afraid of? Could it be commitment? Let me know just how you feel. If not, what is it? You know and I know, anything that means something, you gotta believe this. We're fighting for, even if it means that we gotta rewind. We've been there before and we've seen some hard times.
wonderful. Yeah,
Thank you.
a great track. You know,
Thank
yeah, I'm just curious about the composition of this song. You know, do you ever sing your own backgrounds, or are those other people doing the
That's
backgrounds?
me.
I
I
thought it
don't do
was.
my own
I,
backgrounds. Well, it's
I
very
thought it
rare
was.
that you're gonna hear somebody else do it. Sometimes I might want to add a little extra to it, so I might call my sister or my cousin, be like, "Hey, just throw some backgrounds on there, help me out." But that's the fun part for me because I'm so used to, even though I was writing for songs for other people, producing vocals. That's what I love to do.
Yeah, you
Just
know, for
yeah,
some people it's very difficult because you have to, sometimes you do backgrounds in a different key, you know,
yeah.
and you know, and it's not an easy thing to do, you know. So so you do
Hmm.
your own vocals, and I thought it was. That's why I was asking you about it. So tell me about this song with B Golden. How did this one come about?
Wow, B Golden was like, Conya, I got a track for you. I think you're gonna love it. So soon as he sent me that track, I think I sent it back within that day, and the song was written. I was like, I hope you like it. And he was like, I love it. It was, and that's what I mean. Some songs just the flow is natural, and it was just that
Yeah,
was so easy to write. It was just I started off with the verse, and then started singing a hook. The last part I was playing around. I'm like, what can I do to trip up my background vocals when we're performing live? So I just came with this little crazy vamp at the end that I thought was fun.
well, yeah. When you go on the road and you sing some of these songs, you have background vocalists with you because you're not going to be able to sing all the parts.
I know they get mad at me too because sometimes I call them Hank vocals, ghost vocals. So I'll just be putting little crazy stuff in there trying to figure out if somebody could catch what I did. And when I normally I go out with two singers now, my sister and another young lady just like my sister, and B Golden. Sometimes when he's out, he'll add to the vocals, but it's always a battle as to they're trying to figure out which background vocal to perform. So
Right.
and so we have to keep it simple. So I've learned over the years to kind of keep those things in mind, when stacking my vocals.
Have you worked with B Golden for a while? I mean, you guys go back a while,
Um,
or is it?
a couple years, I want to say almost 3 years now, but I've always heard so many amazing things with him. I mean, about him. So, we actually performed once, and I'm like, that's the guy that I want to be on stage with me. And then when I started hearing his music, I just instantaneously became a fan because I can't tell you one song of his that I don't like that it doesn't
Yeah,
resonate with my soul
yeah, he's a terrific musician. I mean, his
and person.
compositions.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he's
yeah,
talk about instrumentalist
yeah,
multi. Now he can play
yes,
every instrument you name it. He can play it.
yeah. I find that incredible. You know, such great
Yeah,
talent to be able to do that.
yeah.
That's great. Good. You know, I want to. We've been talking about your new. This is your ninth album, is that right? Through
My
rose-colored
ninth soul.
glasses.
My
Your
ninth
your
soul.
ninth LP. And yeah, I know you have a favorite song that I love also on that, and I want to play for everybody called Long Haul. You know,
Yes.
that you released that as a single, didn't you?
I did, and
Yeah.
it came after Wishful Thinking. No, Not Trading You was the first single from that particular project through Rose Colored Glasses. Followed by Wishful Thinking, then Long Haul. That was the last single that from that project so far. Yeah.
And that was in 2022 or 21.
Oh my gosh, I want to say on the cusp of 2021, 2022. Don't
That's
give
what I
me the
thought.
because I
Yeah,
know I was writing in the interim of us being on lockdown. That was the challenge.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. That was quite a challenge for a lot of people. You know, I mentioned to you Brian Culbertson, and Mesa was on my show also,
I
and
love Lisa.
yeah, I love Mesa. You know, she's such
Yeah.
a wonderful person, and she has
Yeah,
Mesa. She does Mesa's Kitchen on Fridays,
I love
and
her.
yeah, and then she sings and she cooks dishes, and she started it during the pandemic. And Brian Culbertson started what he called the Hang, and he did that on Friday nights. He started on Mondays and Wednesdays and moved it to Fridays, and
Wow.
yeah, and he ended up doing something which he never would have done if it wasn't for the pandemic. On the
Mhm.
Hang, by subscription, people could collaborate on the song with him. So on
And
Friday, yeah. So
like,
he would play he would play a couple of just a couple of rhymes on the piano or on his keyboards, and then he started to compose, and people would tell him what they hear and what they think, and he listed all of the people who were fans that were on the Hang on the record. as collaborators.
Wow.
You know, and he had never done that before. He actually created a song, and this is because of the pandemic. And
Yeah,
for so many, you know, for so many people, that the pandemic
mhm.
brought out other sides of their music.
It had to, because especially for people, that is their livelihood. It's like it was just crazy how everything was just shut down or reconfigured. So it took a huge paradigm shift on how to approach everything.
Yeah, he was talking about the technology. How do you have people collectively in your studio who are fans when you're writing a piece? And he had to go buy all these pieces of technology to figure out, how's he
Yeah.
going to do this? I mean, and you had to do it because you couldn't go to a studio, you couldn't perform
Nope.
live. So
I had to ask
yeah,
Eric too. I'm like, well, how do you do this? He's like, well, this is what I use. But it
yeah,
was something. So,
yeah. Everybody got through it. Okay, let me play long haul for everybody, and then you can talk a little bit about that one too. I love this song.
thank you.
Good love like this, built like this, sure don't come easy. Well, once in a lifetime, more valuable and precious than all ever known. Even diamonds or silver or gold. I can go on and on and on. How good you are to me. It took a little while to get this down, but we're here finally. Words alone can explain the way I feel for you. It's all that matters to me. We're forever strong. No, you surrounded. No, you won't. Like this will turn around. Nothing can keep us from this. When all else seems to fail, giving me peace of mind with all your sacrifice. You are my heart when the world seems so cold. You put me first. This is where I belong. I can go on and on about how good you are to me. But don't get me wrong, it ain't always perfect. Could go left easily. But through the sun, the rain, the pain, the strain, we've seen it all. We stay committed, baby. But we stay committed, baby. Together, no matter, under pressure, through up and down, we love on one another. We ride this endless time. Ooh, yeah. Don't you know that I need you just to come on home. Come on home. I'm all in, no matter. I'm all
wonderful.
Thank you.
That's a great track. Yeah,
Thank,
congratulations. So
thank
why don't you tell us a little bit about that track and exactly, how that
you.
kind of happened?
Here we go again with my guy, my brother in music and song, Rodney Jones, also known as Art of Artez. Once again, this song is really dear to me. It's one of my favorite ones. He sent the track, and it just had this kind of not eerie vibe, but just a very unique vibe. And then it was my state of mind too, because the pandemic, I think, messed with everybody, and it was so many mixed emotions. And I think I was having a conversation with a friend, and he was like, you know, this is gonna either, he was talking about his spouse, and he's like, either this is gonna make or break us, because you think about it, whether it's family members, husband and wife, whatever, people don't spend a lot of time. If you're at work most of the time, those people who work outside of the home, when that pandemic shut everything down, people spent more time than they normally would spend. And either it was a good thing or it wasn't. But, and then just the mixed emotions with people, having fear, of the unknown and things like that. So a lot of things were going on in addition to people being able to connect and be in each other's space at that capacity. So I was just putting myself in that. I'm like, wow, if we stick this through, no matter what's going on, we're in it for the long haul. So coming out on the other side. So I was those kind of things are what was going in my mind when I actually wrote that song. It's like that unconditional love. We're ride or die. We didn't kill each other, all that kind of stuff. We no matter what, we stuck this through, and we were in it for the long haul. That's how I came up with the idea.
That's a great song. Yeah, you just reminded me. I have a friend who's an engineer, and when the pandemic came and he was home, I remember after about a couple of months, he said to me on the phone, "I married my wife for better or for worse, but never for lunch."
I love it. Wow. But it did. It really
Yeah,
showed a lot of things, whether the good, bad, the indifferent. It kind of lifted a lot of lenses off.
yeah, yeah. A lot of people fell in love with remote work.
Yes.
It
Yeah, it was
transformed.
too comfortable for some. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, it transformed a lot of stuff. Well, look,
Yeah.
yeah, I love going through these songs with you because it
Thank you.
shows a lot of your versatility. You know, one of the things I'm curious about when you really started out in the early 2000s, record labels and radio was still there, and you didn't choose to go with a record label. Why?
Well, but see, I have been doing this for such a long time. I can tell you stories where we ended up signing contracts with major labels as a teen and early 20s, not knowing what the heck we were doing. And it was just kind of reared this ugly face to us, the industry. So I was like, I don't really want to deal with that. So I will focus on other things, being behind the scenes, writing for people, producing vocals. And I kind of got tricked into the poem about Miss Doss because a lot of those songs, I was like, ooh, I want to get these songs placed on other artists. But the producer, I guess he had a different plan in mind. So he was like, you have a project, already, you might as well just put it out. So that's how that came to be. But I don't know how to explain it. It's just really interesting how that, everything just kind of fell into place, if that makes
Yeah,
sense.
like I said, you're one of the kind of transitional artists when the record industry was starting to go down, and CDs were big, but they didn't have live streaming yet. So
Right.
there was a lot of transition, but a lot of artists still chose to go with a label. It was still the route they chose. And
Yep.
you just didn't,
But
you
what
just
happened
never.
was the first project, A Poem About Miss Dawes, did have major distribution. It was through Orpheus and New Mecca, distributed through EMI. So that was a major situation, but it didn't work out for me. So after that, it was like, it was, they say it's the freshman jinx. The business side wasn't handled as it should have been. And actually, before that record even took off, my lawyer was like, at this point, I know it's going to be hard, but you got to walk away from it. And that's kind of what happened. And then after that, people were like, you're done. And then that just kind of sparked something in me where it was like, oh, you could just go teach and, whatever. And I was like, no, this is not happening. So that's how I was like, let me just try to do this on my own. I went and tried to buy equipment. and I recorded actually all of Just Because. That was me actually recording my own songs.
Really? Oh,
Yeah.
wow.
And pulling my resources together. So I'm forever grateful for Myron Ruffin and Myron Davis and Rodney Jones, for actually believing in me. And Kenny Darnell, that's another person I have to name, because they believed in me, and then it took a life of its own. The songs on there, and then it kind of, the beautiful thing about social media is I was able to get distribution deals overseas and the UK and Japan, so I maintained, like you were saying earlier, relationships. So that's how the whole independent part spearheaded. And I was like, okay, I did okay, well, let me try the next project, and then it was just so on and so on.
Yeah, I heard this interview many years ago with Paul McCartney, and they asked him, why did you guys start Apple Records? And he said, well, we were sitting around and rehearsing, and I said to John, can you tell me why we're only getting 5 cents out of every dollar? And the next day we started Apple Records.
Right, exactly. And that's the other thing, people are like, you're independent, but I'm like, I didn't see anything, at least. And when they were really doing us right, at least you had a dollar for dollar. Imagine if we were getting that right now. But,
Yeah,
I could, the residuals, and I was seeing when I was investing in myself, I could see the return. And also, if I figured if I messed up, then it was because I chose to do that,
right,
not someone else,
right.
making mistakes. And it was, it's growing pains as it is continuously, but it's like I see the fruit of my labor.
Yeah, and there are artists that came before you, way before they had streaming, or they had
Hmm.
any of these internet music opportunities. Neil Young, never he would only sign a record contract if he had 100% control over the project. If he
Yeah.
didn't, he wouldn't sign. And there were artists that were semi-independent even during that era when recording studios were dominant. So
Right.
I I guess it's a decision you made and it worked for you, and but you're one of the people that really carved out an indie career from pretty much from day one.
Yeah, and
You know,
I'm forever grateful. And then, what I will say about the first project, when Tony Nicholas was like, how many artists is going to be able to say that they own their masters? And at the time, I didn't know. He was like, you're going
yeah,
to own your masters. So it was like, yeah.
right, right,
So, and that's so important, because I try to tell my son, I'm like, make sure you know my songs, because if somebody samples my music, it's gonna, you're gonna have control over that. And that's a beautiful thing too, when you hear your music sampled, and other, especially up and coming younger artists, it's amazing that they recognize the art.
a lot of artists have problems with sampling. I'm trying to think of Bob James, phenomenal keyboardist, jazz composer.
Mhm.
Early on, he started to sue a lot of the hip hop artists who were sampling his music by literally taking his music. And
Yeah.
and he created quite a bit of animosity because he didn't want people stealing his stuff. But he eventually made peace with the hip hop artists, and to this day he's one of the most sampled artists in hip
Oh
hop of
yeah.
anybody.
Yeah.
So John Batiste samples, Bruno Mars, but
Oh yeah.
what they do with that is so innovative,
But
it's
I
so
love it.
creative. Yeah,
Yeah.
so sampling keeps the music alive. That's
Right.
what's so
Right.
great about it, and it lets new generations hear those vibes that they wouldn't have access to normally if it wasn't for
Right.
sampling. So
And
yeah.
yeah, definitely. I'm always open to, not one person, rest his soul, is Michael Henderson. Without,
Oh
I
yes, yeah,
did his song, and he gave me kudos and his blessing, Starship, with him and Norman Connors. But he was just always, giving me mentorship with lending his ear, and telling me the ins and out about sampling, So I was like, that kind of made me embrace it. It's like, okay, we're gonna have to have a conversation about what you're doing, but I'm always happy that people are, listening to my music, and so flattered that they want to sample, some portions of it. So
definitely.
I consider it flattering.
Did you work with Norman Connors?
No, no. Actually, Michael Henderson and I is that's who I was keeping in contact with. Yeah.
Yeah, I know Norman, and you know, Starship was such a revolutionary song, and
Right.
his music has been sampled like enormously.
Mm-hmm.
And so many of those artists from the '60s and '70s, have such a legacy today because their music is still alive through artists
Oh
who
yeah.
sample. Yeah,
Right. And that's how we keep it alive, you know. So is you gotta kind of look at it from both angles. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. You do. Well, tell me something. I'm just curious now. You've seen the changes in the record industry and in the recording industry.
Mm-hmm.
We've gone from vinyl to CDs to streaming, and we've gone from record labels to indie artists like yourself. How do you see the changes that have taken place over your career? Look, let's face it. Today, if an artist gets streamed, they get 0.00008 cents per play. So having a career as a musician, if you're just going to try to sell your music, good luck. So
Yeah.
and people used to complain about the record labels ripping off artists. Today streaming
It's
and
ridiculous.
it,
Yeah.
it is, and it's digitized. On top of that, and you lose a
Hmm.
lot of the analog, depth and vibrance of the music. So where do you see music going, Kanye? Do you
Um,
like the direction?
it's kind of bittersweet for some. I mean, in some instances, it's like people who would not have been heard of, or it's so much talent. So I think from that aspect, it's amazing. But when it comes to people getting, they're just as far as monetary, I think is terrible. Like I was saying before, some of the platforms, it's like people are like, oh my God, you got like 10 million streams. That's nothing when you're getting a fraction of cents.
Penny, yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
from that perspective, I think it's terrible. And then I think that human contact, a lot of people are getting deals by just doing things on social media. So they don't really have any, how could I say, solid knowledge of what is like to the humanistic perspective, of what you should be doing. Like should I say, back in the day, they would give them artist training, or what is it called?
and
Grooming.
it was the A&R. That's
Yeah, and
yeah,
now people are just getting deals or just making millions off that. But then when they don't know how to interact, and then they're getting into trouble with the law because it's like nobody has told these people, young people, okay, this is what you do, or you need to make sure you keep your cool. You can't go beating up everybody, and just some knowledge and just how to present themselves, because those things, class never, that never dies. It never fades out. Some things, I don't care if it's 20 or 30 years from now, some things are going to be constant, you know.
yes, yeah, and you're 100% right. And one of the hardest parts is if you happen to hit and a record label does pick you up. It's
Hmm.
one time, and they'll drop you right after that. They
Like
don't.
a
They,
like a
yeah,
fly on drop you, right.
yeah. They don't
Yeah.
believe in the artist. They just
Mhm.
believe in the moment.
Right.
And
And that's,
and,
yeah.
and
That's
it's a,
that was the other thing. It's like what's hot now. And sometimes, things they simmer. You gotta let it simmer before it boils. And they don't want to take the time to groom the artist, or
no.
it was artist development. That's what it was
Yeah, that's
back in the
A&R. Yeah,
days.
artist development. Exactly.
Hmm.
Yep. And they would clothe you. They would tell
Right.
you, I mean, help you, put together your music,
Mhm.
put you on tour, match you up with people.
Right.
Yeah, it's just not done anymore. So,
Right. And
every
so the
go ahead.
longevity is what I see that may be rare. I like some things I can say, like we can go back and listen to a Michael Jackson 20 years from now, is going to still have that same feel good vibe. Some of the current music, I mean, it's talent out there, don't get me wrong, but because it's so fast, I'm not sure if it's going to have that same impact that the music, prior to has had.
Yeah, I mean, no, you're absolutely right, and that's why I was asking you about this. It's very tough for a young musician or a young vocalist
Yeah.
or a young songwriter to really get traction
Yeah.
and to build a career.
And
It's
there's so
it's
much talent. It's so much talent for you.
yes, yes, there is.
Absolutely.
I agree with you 100%. Well, look, last question I want to ask you, and you've been
Mhm.
wonderful, so thank you for being on the show. But the last question is, what are we going to see from Kanye in the next 2 or 3 years? What are you going to do? Anything different? You're going to keep doing the same? When I say doing the same, I don't.
Right.
I just
No.
mean, some people. I know some of the people I've had on say, "Well, at this stage of my career, I want to try this."
Oh, I'm still gonna be me. It's just, but
Yeah.
I'm forever a student. So with me teaching, what was it last year? I had like a master class with the students, and I felt like doing the writing with them. They made me become even a better writer. So I just want to continue to share my gift and for to pay it forward, as well as learn from the youth and keep creating music and doing what I love to do. You know, that's what I see myself doing the same thing. you know.
That look, it's wonderful you can bring this to young people, in a classroom situation,
Oh
where
yeah.
they would never have this kind of exposure. So you are paying it forward. It's wonderful.
Thank you. Thank you. And I'm printing out vinyl too. I'm trying to that's in the works. So it's interesting that you mentioned that, but I'm trying to see which project I want to put on vinyl. So that should be coming up.
Oh,
Awesome.
that's terrific. Vinyl has become the biggest selling form of distributed
Right.
music out of streaming.
Yeah.
Everyone,
Sure is.
and it has so much to do with analog and the difference in the texture of the
It's that
sound.
sound. I've
Yeah,
even went and bought, like, I'll go, I have some old records and old vinyls, but even went to like the half price bookstore because the vinyl is expensive, and just collected. And I also bought those little turntables, and that sound,
yeah,
I hands down, I don't care what anybody says, it's nothing, it's no feel like that.
exactly.
It hits differently.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
The music is thin. When it's digitized.
Yeah. It's
Yeah,
not layered, it's just so organic. Talk about organic. That's what it
yeah,
is.
exactly right.
Yeah.
If you're gonna do a vinyl, that would be really cool.
Yeah, I've just reached out to the company that presses up my other music.
That's
Yeah, so
great. The last thing I just want to kind of mention to you and see what your response
mhm.
is. On Source Radio, we play jazz and jazz fusion 24/7. Um, Urban stations have crowded out soul and neo soul and blues and R&B. It's
Mhm.
just not there anymore. And a lot of the young people are looking for different kinds of music. That's why they'll gravitate to a John
Mhm.
Batiste or to a
Oh
Bruno
yeah,
Mars. You
amazing.
know, because they're tired of the same thing, and yet they have no control over it. We tend to say this is what they want. It's not what they want; it's what they're being fed. They don't really have much choice.
And there's
So
room. Yeah, you hit it
yes,
right on. There's room. It's just people. The outlets are exposing them to what they want to expose them to, because like I said, music is universal. And the pandemic showed that how powerful it was, getting people
yeah,
through some tough times. So they want something new and refreshing. They want something different. We grew up on diverse music, and I think that's the component that's missing. Everything is kind of catered. It's cookie cutter,
exactly.
so we need
Yeah.
we need to go back to expansions and showing different varieties, and the diversity of great music comes from all
Yeah.
angles. Mm.
Absolutely. You're still a classic songwriter, but now so many songs are being written with algorithms and a computer, and that it's not even a lyricist and a
Yeah,
composer anymore. It's and they create the hook artificially using
I
again algorithms.
know. It's
Yeah,
crazy. It's
yeah,
crazy.
and everything just is formulaic and sounds the same.
Mhm.
So
I agree.
yeah,
I like
that's why we do jazz 24/7. We
uh,
to show how people want to hear it. We get 6,000 people per hour just listening to jazz on our station, and not no other show is just listening to
yeah.
the music. And we have
It's amazing, but
60,000. Yeah,
it's not lost. It's not a lost art, because I'm gonna tell you, because I tell you that I teach. It's a young man in my class, my algebra 2 class, and he's in 10th grade. He just studies, Coltrane. It's just all I let him listen to the music, and it's like, man, you can just hear him how he's just focused. And so it's good music. You can never is never gonna die out. No matter how much is not embraced by quote unquote the masses as it should be. It's I can see it, and we have to make sure we, like, such as me, I play music in my room, so I'm letting them hear Ella or the Marcellus brothers or whatever. It's
Yeah.
just they're gonna So it's just I think it won't die out, but it is a little annoying. It's like when they try to put everything in a box and expose what they want to expose to the masses.
Yeah. And so much of it is it's the cart driving the horse. It's the technology driving
Oh
the
yeah,
creative process where people become an appendage of the technology, and that's
yep.
not what music's about.
Yeah.
Music is a creative process that comes from the heart. And that,
They
so
want tangibility now. I think a lot of the
yeah,
young people, they're very smart, so they're not buying it.
yeah, yeah.
So I think we're kind of going back.
Wonderful. Well, Kanye, I want to thank you so much for spending the time with us tonight.
Thank you.
I'm sure all your fans will be happy to be able
Oh
to come back
yeah.
and and watch this, and and you'll pick up a lot of new fans too. And
Thank you.
I'd like to have you back on when you finish your next project.
Absolutely. I'm so excited. So I'm excited for B Golden too. So, like I
Yeah.
said, and I will be finishing up. He's going to be doing the mixing of a couple of the songs that we did. So I'm excited to be able to share
Well,
everything with
he's
everyone.
going to be on the 23rd on the Thursday night at 7
Okay.
o'clock. So if you want to tune into Source, you can
I
actually ask
can.
him a few questions. All, all the viewers can go to YouTube and they can ask questions
Good stuff.
and talk to the artist. So, well, look, again, thank you so much. Have a wonderful weekend, and we'll see you
Thank you.
again.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a good evening.
A pleasure.
Bye.
So long.